Guys, I got to share with you what happened earlier on today. I spent 90 minutes with Emily Wong, and get this. Just over 6 months ago, she wanted to start a pickleball business. She was mid certification. She's not a pro. She doesn't have a club, and she wanted to go full time. And she built a community to over 540 students, making $12,000 her top month. And in this interview, she shares everything. She shares her lesson secrets, how she got her first clients, how she doubled her business, the pivots she made, the mistakes that she made, the software that she used. It's everything step by step. So if you are a pickleball coach, grab a piece of paper and a pen, or if you want to be a pickleball coach, this is going to be the best 90 minutes that you spend. It is value bomb after value bomb. Let me know in the comments what you think. This is a belter. I'll see you there.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, myself and Emily met earlier on in the year. Emily listened to a podcast and then we connected, and then I've been supporting her on her journey. I want to dive in by just asking you your origin story around pickleball, and how you discovered it. And then we'll talk about why you decided to become a coach.
Yeah, for sure. So I discovered pickleball like a lot of people during COVID. So it was like late 2022. I was just walking around these local parks during COVID. The gyms were shut down, or I didn't really want to go back. I was working remotely, and so I was really looking for a new hobby that was active since I had a really active lifestyle. And I saw these people playing something that looked like tennis at my local parks, but it wasn't quite. Like the court was a lot smaller, the ball, you could hear the sound. They looked like they were having so much fun. I was honestly envious. And so I really bit the bullet and signed up for my first class after a failed dating stint. I was like, okay, I think I need to like focus on myself. That means acquiring a new hobby or going back to a previous hobby. Signed up for my first class, and then I got there. Barely knew how to serve the ball. I mean, I had played tennis in high school before, so I thought it would be like really easy. I'd get it down. I couldn't serve, but then I left as the most improved player. That usually tends to happen for me, just being most improved. And then I didn't want to leave. Like I stayed overtime to do like a game with the new students. And then I went home, bought my first two paddles so that a friend or a partner could join me, or my sister. And then I went to like an open play the next day and really had tried to play like every day since, whenever I can. And I was absolutely hooked. Like I didn't know what to expect, but I loved it right away. Yeah.
Awesome. So what was the time period between you picking up pickleball and then going, I actually want to teach this?
Yeah, so I learned, roughly at the end of 2022, so about 2 years ago. And I just really, I know I love helping people. And like I was thinking of like what's the easiest way I could impact. And so what like the turning point for me to coaching was end of last year, early this year, I moved to a city up north of Seattle. It's called Mount Lake Terrace. I came here and I was like, why isn't there any pickleball? Like all the surrounding cities have some sort of program. And so I worked with the Parks and Rec director to set up some open gym times, and I advertised it as very beginner friendly because I really wanted to bring the sport to Mount Lake Terrace. And so when we had our first open gym, I thought that people would come kind of knowing the score, knowing the rules, having their own paddles, things like that. But we actually got so many new beginners, and it was like we could accommodate 20, at least 10 to 12 are absolutely new. And so like I didn't want to turn them away because like I know how fun pickleball is, and it's just about the experience. It's not about how well you hit or all the technicalities when you're in open play. And so I just kind of stepped into my role. Like I wore a shirt that said something like coaching, pickleball coaching on it. So I just stepped into that role and was like, I can impact, I want to help my community. This is something tangible I can do today. Like I don't need a certification. I don't need someone to tell me I'm a coach. As long as I can play and as long as I love the sport and want to help people, I just stepped into it. And so I took one of the two courts and I taught the 10 or 12 people how to play within that hour. They were doing open play. They were just integrating, mixing in with everyone. And so, yeah, it was roughly what a year and a half journey from learning how to play. So
Awesome.
very early on.
And share with
Yeah.
people what's happening behind the scenes in terms of your work and your life, like while you're doing this also.
Yeah, so this was actually, that's a great question. So one of the catalysts of me wanting to kind of try something new or impact in a new way was I was working in tech, and the company I was working for was going through an acquisition that was finalized at the end of last year. So that really was a personal reflection point for me of like, okay, how do I want to make an impact every day just through that integration period with the new company? Things are really slow. I wasn't sure what my purpose was every day at work. And so I knew I still wanted to help people and connect with people. And I knew I loved pickleball. That's what I did almost every day ever since I learned. And so didn't really necessarily want to quit my job because it wasn't the most practical thing to do, given the tech job market, given that I had just bought a house. So, not the most wise decision having a mortgage. And so I was like, oh, what can I do like on the weekends, on the side? Like, to get that sense of meaning and purpose as well. And so I, started coaching on the side after work, on the weekends, whenever I could have time. I told my students up until, I want to talk more about this. I left my job, but it was my full-time job by like heart. And my actual job was more like, the job that I needed to keep this thing going. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. So now you're in this kind of push pull because there's this new passion and you're like, oh, is there
Hmm.
going to be a transition? But you didn't know, right? So
Hmm.
what were your views and expectations on what you believed at the time, that what you could achieve in pickleball? Were you thinking is it a little bit of extra cash? Were you thinking you could do it for like what were you thinking at that time?
Oh my, like I like knowing what I know now, I'm blown away because even when I first met Simon, January, February timeframe earlier this year, there was no way I would have thought I could do this full time. Like I did not like at that time I hadn't even charged someone for coaching. Like I just I wanted a business out of it. I've always wanted to start a business. I've always known that I was meant to do more than just working my day job. But I had no idea. Like, I also had dreams, like a lot of pickleballers, like, we want to open a facility, we want to play 24/7 year round, right? And so that was my original dream is like, oh, how cool would it be to have like dedicated pickleball courts, right? Like, we don't have that really in Seattle. And so I was like, that's maybe not that feasible. So, maybe we'll try coaching, but I was really like experimental. I didn't really commit to anything at the time. I didn't know where I could exactly impact. But I mean, with Simon's help, it was just like taking action and then taking the next action and then generating momentum, not just thinking like, oh, I'm going to jump to the end goal, but like, what are these like actionable steps you can take to get there? But I had no idea where this would end up.
We'll talk
Yeah.
about those actual actionable steps so that people can actually start to apply them. And I also do want to talk
Yeah.
about a little bit later on about the going all in because there was a pivot
Yes.
with you of going all in. So let's talk about certifications because this
Hmm.
in the space is very controversial, right? There's some people who say you don't need to certify. There's some people that are like, yes, you
Hmm.
do. There's also obviously
Hmm.
the insurance and all that kind of stuff. So what was your view on certification? What was your,
Hmm.
inquiry discovery process like? And then ultimately, what you decide to do?
Yeah, so I would say starting like last year's summer, so 2023 summer, I was already kind of looking into coaching certifications. I think I was on like Reddit one night and was like, "Oh, what are like the pickleball certifications? How do people become a coach?" So it was like very initial discovery, and what I landed on is that kind of like two major certifications, and there's a few more now, but at the time there was PPR and PCI. And so the main difference is like PPR had to be done in person. You have to fly out to location on a certain date. PCI, it's like self-paced online. You record videos and send them in. And so if I had a choice, I love doing things in person because I will get it done by the time I leave. So like there's, being working full time, being super busy, that's what I would have preferred, but there were no trainings in my area or nowhere at a convenient time I could fly to. So I opted with PCI because I didn't really want to waste any time and get going. So my viewpoint when, late last year, early this year is like, you have to be certified to be a coach. Like you need this piece of paper. And that's like totally evolved because I did sign up for PCI. I went through all like the knowledge modules. It was like pretty static modules like text and videos. And then there's a knowledge test. And then you have to submit your videos. I went through all the knowledge portion. I never actually finished the video evaluation because once I finished that kind of knowledge portion, I just started coaching right away. Like with Simon's guidance, found my first client and it just took off. Like it just slowly took off. And so I never really revisited it because I think the modules are a great starting point to kind of give you an idea of like, oh, this is how you could teach something. This is kind of, what they're looking for. But it didn't give very like actionable steps on like, okay, this is how you get started. This is the exact lesson plan. This is what happened if this happens. Like you kind of only learn that like through experience and through working, in my case, with actual beginners, like, and knowing what they need and what they want and where they thrive. And so I realized soon enough, like, experience trumps everything. And I'm not trying to discredit any certification, but that's what helped me the most. And yeah, like I will say, certifications aren't like invalid. Like the best kind of part to cover yourself is the insurance. Like you do want the liability insurance. You do want to make sure in the worst case scenario you're covered. Those things are important. I don't know that you need a certification to get that. You can always get it through like a third party. But that's probably the most important part.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think people do it for different reasons. I think some people need that, piece of paper for a confidence thing. What I noticed in you
exactly.
early on
Hmm.
was that you needed some direction, but you had that drive and like you said, you got into coaching people and then you were suddenly discovering things in that process. You didn't feel like you needed that piece of
Exactly.
paper. And so,
Hmm.
I think that's important for people to understand.
Hmm.
Everyone's different.
Absolutely.
Some people want that.
Hmm.
So, the reality is people
Hmm.
aren't coming to you saying like, "Oh, do you have that piece of paper?" Right?
Exactly. Exactly. And one thing I'll add is just like with anything, you don't need the piece of paper to identify as such. Like you can be a pickleball
Mm,
coach without the certification. And it's just what really kind of shapes identity. Again, I keep emphasizing this is your actions, is you
mm,
stepping into that role and saying, like, I can coach, I have the skills and I have the drive, like Simon said, and I have the ability to impact. It's like knowing that you can do that regardless if you just started playing so like many years down the line or being a pro. Like you do not have to be a pro. You don't need someone to tell you that you are something to be something. You can actually just be that thing by doing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So I think it's going to be important for people to learn. Did you do a bunch of free lessons? Did you go into getting let's talk about the decisions and the actions to get your first paid client? Because for a lot of people who are watching this, they have not
Hmm.
had a business before, right? There's this
Right.
imposter syndrome that comes up. I know with working with other people, there's this transition of like, are people going to pay? Then there's of course, the grouping people together. We'll talk about, later on. But for you, can you go back to kind
Hmm.
of that kind of moment and give some actionable advice for people who are in that kind of stage of like not being paid yet, but having the skills and being great as a coach?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say the transition happened pretty quickly, especially with Simon's help. Like I mentioned, I ran an open play or open gym in Mount Lake Terrace, and obviously I taught for free. Like that was volunteering, that was giving back to my community. And I think kind of shortly before after that, I did like a private lesson with a friend, like two friends or something. So like one versus two. And that was just to, like get my confidence up to be like, okay, I can teach new beginners, right? You just start small. And then shortly after, like Simon encouraged me, like, just go get your first client. Like that's kind of like the next tipping point, right? Like I was kind of like scared to go from like zero to something. I was like, I don't even know how much to charge. I don't know who's gonna pay for it. Like I don't even, people don't know me as a coach, things like that. So once I had that action item to go get my first client, I knew exactly where to go. Like I went to my community groups. And because I had already offered some like, oh, I have to mention, I did offer a free open play before, so I kind of got my name out there, one or two free open plays. And then I got my name out there as like, oh, I'm someone trying to make an impact in the community. And so people just want to learn pickleball. Like it's the fastest growing sport. So it's not a super hard sell if you're like, oh, I want to teach you how to play at a time and place that works for you. It's almost like a no-brainer, right? And so I think, yeah, I just did a couple free things and then I went to go charge my first person. And then it just was momentum from that. It's like, okay, you have one person, but I love doing kind of those lessons in groups of four because a lot of time in pickleball, it's you're playing in doubles. So like, how do we simulate the most realistic experience? So it's like now you have one. Why don't we try to get two to three more people, right? Like even if we don't, it's one on one. If we get two, it's one on two, or three and me, or four. And then so my first lesson, I believe I had three, and then I moved on to four. And then I realized a ton of people wanted to sign up, and I'm like, why would I turn them away? And so I recruited my partner, Ollie. We'll talk more about that later, but I was like, can you take on four and I take on four? Like, I'll tell you how we need to do this and I'll lead the class. We just need like more attention for the beginners. And then we slowly went to eight and then 12 and 16. I just love groups of four. I mean, if we can get it done, like, why not? Why would we hold people back, right? If they clearly want to learn and I clearly want to help. So
Yeah,
that's how we
I want to
did
dive
it.
into that a little bit and more
Yeah.
in a moment around the grouping.
Hmm.
But you said something earlier, which was about
Hmm.
getting your first clients. Now, you were an admin
Hmm.
of a pickleball group because people are probably going to
Hmm.
be wondering, like, where do I
That's
start to
good.
get my first clients? So, can you talk
Hmm.
about those steps of how you got that, being an admin in that group, and then
Hmm.
why you decided to focus on Facebook?
Yeah. So let's see. So Facebook helps me a lot in terms of community groups and where to play. So I have that perspective as a player. And one of my prior coaches, I think I took like my first lesson from him when I first started learning. And he started this group. It was like beginner pickleball in the Seattle area. And there might be something similar in your city. And I just saw that it was quickly growing. It was like almost 2,000 at the time. I'm sure we're over 3,000 now, and people just kept asking questions. How do I learn how to play? Where can I play? Where do I do this? It's like all beginners. And so I was like, if I want to be a coach and I'm roughly at a 3.5 trying to get to 4.0 level, so I am not pro, like where can I impact? And that's beginners. Like I feel confident I can teach them how to play and I can get them started and get them in a good position on their journey. And so I was like, oh, what if I asked him, can I help with this group? Because Simon said, he taught me a lot about adding value, not just asking people for things or selling to them. It's like, how do you add value first? So I'm like, okay, can I get access to this group? Can I help them? Can I host open plays? Can I just give them what they need and what they want? And then like establish myself as a group expert, as someone who can and wants to help them. And then from there, I can be like, hey, I am now officially coaching and taking money. So that's where I found my first client is like, when I hosted an open play, I posted a picture or a selfie from that event, or when I taught my first kind of lesson, whether it was free or not, my partner took a picture of me doing it. And so, and I have my coaching shirt on, I have like my caddy with my balls, all of that to like embody that coach identity. And so it didn't take long for people to be like, oh, like Emily, like she's a coach in this area. I want to learn. She's teaching beginners how to learn. Let's
And
go,
she
right?
keeps
Like
on
it's like,
showing up, and you keep on
and
showing up.
yes, yeah. And I was willing to show up whether it was one person or 20. Like my partner and I joke, the first kind of official session where it was paid, I had the three students that were paid, and I reserved the rest of the courts for open play. So my partner thought he'd show up to help a handful of people, and it was like 20. And he was like, how do we go from like 0 to 20? And I'm like, that's how I do things. Like, if we can do it, let's do it. Why not? Right. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a funny
Now,
story.
now, at this point, had you decided on like a niche, or because of the beginner group, because you work with beginners, and we'll talk about that, in detail. But had you kind of decided on the niche that you wanted to work with at this stage?
Not like yes and no. So like even within like beginners, it's pretty nuanced, right? Like you have the people who've never played, or even if they've never played, you have like the more athletic, like tennis background, pick up things quickly type of like persona. And then you have like what you call like advanced beginners or like normal beginners where they've played for a bit. It could be anywhere from a week to a year or more. Everyone grows at different paces. So I was like, I wonder if I should, at that time, I was like, should I do like beginner where they've never played, or should I do like advanced beginner? And so I tried both. I did like beginner open play, didn't really judge, anywhere on that spectrum. I did an advanced beginner clinic for free or like skills and drills. And I realized that everyone who showed up was at different levels. So that was kind of challenging. And just like meeting someone a year into the game, they have a lot of habits established already, right? Whether it's good or bad. And so I was like, okay, let's just start from the beginning. Let's start with the 101, the new beginner, and then let's see what they need from there. Now we have a 102, and then I built a 103. And then once I had the 102, 103, I could mix in like other beginners that have already played. And so I caught people at a different stage in their journey, but being able to catch them very early on in their journey, you can really influence their experience and get them off to the right start. So it was a little mix of both, but I didn't know my niche to begin with. Like when I have too many options, I don't know how to make a decision. So I just experimented and went from there.
Let's talk about pricing and grouping. So I think one of the biggest mistakes for a lot of business owners is, splitting costs between people. I think it causes challenges and problems in organization. Can you talk about, the group sizes now, and
Hmm.
current, the current pricing of how much you were charging back then, just so people can understand, because I think people watching
Hmm.
this who are maybe thinking about becoming a
Yeah.
coach, or they are a coach, but they've
Hmm.
not transitioned to paid yet. They're really asking the
Hmm.
question, which is why you were stuck. How much do I charge?
Hmm.
And then having that
Yeah.
belief in yourself, right? And maybe
Hmm.
looking at other people, and maybe, just kind of
Hmm.
like, because you're somebody also that when you started with me, you already knew that you wanted to create leverage in a scalable business. And so a lot of people can get caught in a trap early on
Hmm.
whereby they get burnt out by doing it and not having the right business structure. Can you just share a little bit about that, that part of the journey?
Yeah, pricing, it can be a point of getting stuck, like to your point, but early on we did an exercise when I was kind of hesitant to charge, is like, we went on two ends of the extreme. It's like zero or ten, $5. Like, is it worth your time to show up for that? And then how about like $100, right, per person? And so we landed on a sweet spot of 50. It's like, okay, like 50, like we can work with that. Like it's worth showing up if it's just one person, especially early on. And it's worth showing up if it's more than one person. And so, kind of speaking to your point with like by the group, it's just easier to pay per person. That way, you're not dealing with overhead. If it's two, do this. If it's three, do this. It's like no matter what, it's a standard rate. If they don't make it, they're kind of on the hook for that. And if they do make it, they're also accountable for that. And so it just made it a lot easier. And it made scaling so much easier too, because everyone that comes in, $50, whether it's one or four or eight. And yeah, and then I did, like people really didn't bat an eye at 50 unless like they really didn't want to pay at all. Like people who expect free, like $10 probably wouldn't have flown either, like, but 50, it's like, oh, like for a Saturday morning outing, for a date night with a partner, like definitely doable. Two people, $100. So really didn't get much pushback. I did experiment. I was getting pretty confident. I was like, oh, how about 75? Because my classes were filling up so quickly. And while I love scaling, there is still like a limit that, like 8-to-1 ratio, I would kind of say is like probably the limit, for a really good class for beginners. So I still had to cap it. So I was like, oh, how about 75 to make it even more worthwhile my time and then get me closer to potentially replicating a tech salary someday. But I did notice that sales were a little slower. And I could have like dug in deeper and surveyed people a lot more. Like Simon was like, you could jump on calls to kind of close that sale and do that thing. But like at the time, like time is money, right? Like I was working full time, so I didn't have all the time in the world to do like as many sales calls or like conversations. So I was like, okay, it's $25. I'd rather not jump on a 20-30 minute call. It's $50. Let's get more people. Let's have this just be like the front end lead generator. Like it has more of a value than just the class, right? Obviously they get that value, but we get a lot more. So it was an easy square number. And yeah, I haven't changed the price since. It's worked out. And yeah, we can always talk about how you can offer more down the line, but beginner
Awesome.
$50 has been great.
Yeah, and then also you just touched on it very briefly about scaling, and I call it the ascension model, right? So
Yeah,
people need to understand, because often, I've been to coaches and it's like, oh, see you next time. And there's no gamification. In fact, one of the podcasts that you
exactly.
really liked was the whole gamification part. And And
Yeah,
in pickleball, it's kind of gamified in a way, right? Where you go from a 2.5 to a 3, 3.5. But we also need to see
exactly.
business like that. And if people love
Hmm.
what you're doing, and you give them a great
Hmm.
experience, they're going to want to invest in more. And we'll talk about those big turning points in the business,
For
moving
sure.
forward with the things that really catapulted the business to the
Hmm.
next level. So
For sure.
um, let's talk about the first thing, right? Before you kind
Hmm.
of went all in, what was the big move that really took the members? And by the way, what we've not mentioned here is that you're renting courts from the city. This is not a club that you own. And I really want to
Hmm.
emphasize that, because essentially this is a virtual business. Because some people are going to
Hmm.
be like, oh, I don't have that money to invest in a club, but you're essentially renting courts. But now you
Hmm.
have an ascension model, a business structure that allows
Hmm.
you the freedom to do this full time. So can we just talk about
Totally.
the big move essentially that got essentially to your first 50 members, and then because now I think you're, where are you now, like 500, 600?
Yeah, 540, five
Okay.
over 500.
Yeah, awesome. In the
Yeah.
6 months. So yeah, what was the big move, the first big move that you made that made the biggest difference to the business, where you're like, oh wow.
Yeah, obviously it's a lot of little moves and big moves, but I will say so, starting off with open plays, a combination of open plays and the beginner one-on-one classes, so bringing people in. So that was pretty good. I don't know if we got to 50 then, but what was really cool is that in my first paid session, I had a student that had posted about me in like a local, it was like Seattle ladies social group or something. Someone was asking, "Oh, I want to get a bunch of ladies together. I want to learn how to play pickleball." And she was like, "Go check out Emily," and like tags me in there. And then that like led to a whole thread of like 10 other people commenting from that group that they want to learn. How do they learn? All this stuff. So I'm like, why don't I go into now this Facebook group? I think it had like 15,000 people. I don't know how many today. And I introduced myself like very genuinely. I was like, "Hi, I'm Emily. Like, this is how pickleball changed my life. Like, I would love to get a ladies thing going." Like I didn't know if I was going to niche to just women or ladies, but I was like, why don't we give this a try? Like, it's a very social sport. And so I did like a ladies meetup. It was like $10 a person. It's open play. And then I taught a bunch of the ladies from that group. And what I did was I took a selfie again with the ladies. I put them on the same court, even if they were mixed in with other people in my class. And I gained a lot more students by saying like, "Oh, I've taught ladies in this group," and then that like I posted a picture of the meetup, which was like 20 some people, and then that like it gave people FOMO, and they're like, "Wait, where can I join? Where do you guys meet?" Like, and then you'll realize a lot of them don't know how to play, and you can kind of take away that objection from them or barrier of entry and be like, "I can teach you though, so that's not an issue, right?" Or I can meet you where you guys are at. So I would say that easily got me to that and being in the beginner pickleball in Seattle group, 1 to 200 people easily from the beginning, like first 1 or 2 months.
Awesome. And then I just want to emphasize here also the importance of being willing to position yourself as a pickleball coach, because at the time
Yes.
you didn't have your Instagram as you as a pickleball coach. You weren't positioned
No.
in that way. And I think that was also
Hmm.
a big move, and you willing to start to be on camera. It's something that you weren't super comfortable with, but you
Nope.
developed that, and in with challenge you started to
Hmm.
get more comfortable in it. Can you talk about that? And because it's really about social proof and also about you being confident enough. And so
Hmm.
how did your confidence grow in those early stages?
Yeah, let's see. So, yeah, there's a mixture of like taking pictures, uploading it, and like also like face to camera, like video. So, I will say, like, prior to this journey this year, I was pretty low key on social media. Maybe I'll post like an occasional share of a story with my friends or like something from vacation, or you won't hear from me for years. Like, very low key. And then, from a mix of just like attending Simon's Picklepreneur sessions at the time and coaching, and also like there was like a fun challenge. We used to get like bi-weekly challenges, and I'm super competitive. Like if I say I'm gonna do something and there's like I don't really care what the consequence is, but someone told me how to get something done that is reasonable, I'm gonna get it done. So there was this challenge that was like 5 days of content in a row on live video, which is like super scary. Like, first of all, I don't post videos of myself talking. I don't like hearing myself talking. I'm more used to it now. And it was 5 days. I was stuck, but the fact that I had to do it every single day, even if I didn't want to, and realizing that people were receiving it really well. I thought they were gonna judge me for like, oh my God, why are you like posting every day? Or why are you just randomly on live? They were actually curious, like, huh, like why is Emily on live? And I didn't tell them why until the very end. But people like engaged with the content, messaged me. We talked about it when we hung out. It got people from like my college days, my intern days, my high school days coming out of the woodworks saying hi. And like that's where I thrive is like human connection. So I was like, even if some people think I'm like cringe or annoying or whatever they think or don't think,
Mm.
like I got so many positive benefits out of it that, and I realized that I wasn't really scared of being on camera. It was like the me being in my head before getting on the camera that was worse, like the anticipation, the dread. But once I hit record, like I'm good. It's just a conversation with a friend at that point, like what we're doing right now. So there was that turning point in terms of video. And then for posting pictures on Facebook, I just realized that like sure it might kind of like consume my news feed. People might be like, why is everything pickleball? But again, like the engagement I got from people whether I knew them or not, like in these groups and being able to impact, knowing there was so much interest, like it was something beyond me. I wasn't even posting about myself. I was posting about the community and how to help the community. It was just something bigger than me. So
Yeah.
it wasn't just like, oh, it's just Emily posting again. Although I still do have my qualms. Sometimes I get in my head and I'm like, I don't want to be on camera right now, or I'll complain to Simon, like, I don't feel ready or I don't feel great. But honestly, just doing it and having that accountability and that milestone, like, I'm not going to back out of it. Simon knows I'll take the action.
And by the way, guys, if you want to
Yeah.
get access to that exact 5-day process, go check out the link in the description. It's called the Super Brand
Hmm.
Kickstart inside the community. And you can just go through that and start getting results. Plus, there's a mindset training in there too. I do also want to share that Emily went through a 6-week process every single day working on her
Hmm.
personal development. Could we just talk about the personal development side in
Hmm.
terms of like, you know, that helping you to overcome fears and kind of, because I think that going back to what I
Hmm.
was saying earlier, for new entrepreneurs, there is a lot of
Hmm.
fear, right? And that's very real for people. What are people going to think?
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, like the anxiety of
Hmm.
it, like there's all of this stuff that comes up, and if we don't actually address
Yeah.
that, then it can
Yeah.
become problematic because you can self-sabotage a very amazing opportunity that can be ahead because of your own thinking.
Hmm. Yeah, so I did the super high performance program alongside coaching with Simon and also attending the Picklepreneurs calls like weekly or bi-weekly. Yeah, I will say like, and Simon knows this, like one of my biggest hurdles is like the fear being in my head, anxiety about things. And it was really helpful going through that program and also alongside Simon's support because I think one thing that really stood out is just like, you know, committing to what you're saying you're gonna do and like reprogramming yourself in that way. Like if it's on your calendar, you're going to do it, right? Like we set certain goals, like no phone before bed, like actually go exercise and work out, and just knowing like and sitting with that fear. Like there's some meditations where you're like sitting and processing and releasing that energy and knowing where it comes from, whether that's like some trauma from the past or like how real is this. And yeah, just really talking through it was really helpful because there are a lot of times where I'm subconsciously self-sabotaging, and it's nice to have a trusted coach to be like, am I self-sabotaging or should I really just not do this? And it can be, it depends, but a lot of times like it's something I can do. But I didn't know that's something I can do because I'm like, oh, what if so and so thinks like this, some random person from high school, some judgment from my family, and this and that. And you just realize like that one person is holding you back from helping 100 people, 1,000 and more. So like even there was like the 7-day all fired up challenge before I did super high performance. And I think it was something along the lines of like how many people you could impact by like what are you not doing, that you could be doing to impact all these people. And again, like I realized I could do something greater than myself. So I was letting like this like fear or like, not even like a real fear, but it felt really scary and real, hold myself back from like really helping people. And like in a way, like that was kind of selfish. And I don't like being selfish. So I was like, the whole reframe kind of blew me away. I think that's what tipped me over into the program, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Right.
Yeah.
I want to touch on some, some other things here now. So, at what financial point did you
Hmm.
go and say, like, number wise, uh, I can see this as me being able to do it full time? Like, was there a certain amount? Can you remember that where you're like, I really think this is possible? Because there's a transition point there. You have to do the work, you have to get the clients, you have to structure the business properly. Was it
Hmm.
5 grand? Was it 10 grand? Was it 15 grand? What was it that where you were like, this is really sustainable?
Yeah. Like specific numbers wise, I would say somewhere between like 10 to 12. I don't think I've ever hit a 15 grand month yet, but like knowing that it could hit six figures, like coming from tech, coming from where a six-figure salary is normal, even starting out, I'm like, well, I didn't want to start exactly from square zero or square one financially because financial freedom is very important to me for a whole host of reasons. But so I knew like, I need to hit at least 10 grand, right? Because then times 12, now we're at 120. Like it's not exactly replicating what I was making, but at least like it's a great starting point for year one. And so I will say there's kind of two main tipping points. So the first one was like in May, June timeframe. So I think at the time my revenue was definitely less than 10K. Like it was pretty slow, collecting $50 at a time, collecting $10 at a time for open play. So it was very slowly growing. But I was like, okay, like what's the next thing that's going to kind of unlock more revenue? And it was a combination of I kind of wanted to do a tournament. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I was like, maybe that's where we can capture more of the competitive people, more of the people who aren't just starting out, but are beginners. So I started launching beginner tournaments. But that was also at the same time that I made a decision to invest in my personal brand. So that's where I made an investment with Simon. Um, and it was a pretty significant sum. And so I was like, well, the brand is not something I'm going to launch tomorrow. I'm not going to see the results of that tomorrow. But I need that revenue to kind of justify that expense. And so the combination of that, like me making big investments, made me want to kind of recoup that revenue and kind of get it back. So, launching a tournament, realizing that I could charge $50 per person, and you can have way more people because you're not actively coaching on that day. And so, I was able to book six courts, which means I got 24 people. That's $1,200 per bracket or per time slot that I had. So I'm like, okay, I can sell one. Now I can sell two. That's 2,400. You can sell three. That's 3,600. And so I was like, even if I did one bracket per month, that's 1,200 a month for like a few hours of my time on the day of and some admin work. Of course, that was a lot harder in the beginning. So that was the first tipping point with tournaments. I think that helped double my revenue in a month or two. That plus what I was already doing. So I was like, okay, so it's not like such turtle pace anymore. And then the second thing was the summer. Like in July, August, like everyone wanted to come out and learn. Like in Seattle, it might be a Seattle thing, it might be around the other cities, but I say we're like ants. We kind of hide out for 6 months of the year, and then when the sun comes out, we all come out. So the summer classes, like everything sold out. We were getting up to 16. We were able to do a 101, 102, like at least once a week, maybe twice. We did a 103 every other week. And by sellout, I mean 16 people. We had wait list. In July, it was my biggest tournament, three brackets, 72 people. So that's
Crazy.
$3,600 in a day
Mm.
right there. And so that was our first month over 10K. Um, with keeping in mind that I also had my partner helping me. He was in a time and phase of his life where he wasn't working full time, so it was something we could do together. So that was awesome to help scale out. But yeah, that was the second tipping point. I'm like, once you hit 10 or 12K, and on your first year, if I were to do it full time with the courts with that demand, assuming that it keeps growing, like man, like you could, like imagine if I had all the time in the world, what I could do. That was only doing it on the side, like
And
again,
that
evenings and
revenue
weekends.
and that revenue is also so important for you to be able to reinvest back in the business for your clients, right? To make it good experiences
Absolutely.
for them, to be able to run
Yeah,
ads in the future, to be able to
exactly.
reach more people. Because,
Hmm.
I think when we talk about
Exactly.
numbers, I think it's important to give
Mhm.
context that running a business, you need to, Emily's not just,
Totally.
you know, having this money for herself. She's needing to invest in things to
Hmm.
grow, to create other opportunities, to grow pickleball. So you need to make
Yeah,
money, right? You need to make it
right.
profitable.
Absolutely. Like something that Simon emphasized early on is like revenue is key. Like it's important to have that. And it's also key for me personally because I value financial freedom and financial stability. So it's hard for me to do something like unless it's a volunteer thing and that expectation is clear. But if it's a business, to know if I'm not making any money, it's like I'm kind of defeated. Like I don't feel stable and secure and going to the next level. And another thing I'll add is like even while I was making a lot, what Simon said, like reinvesting. Like in June, I went to train with some pros. I paid $5,000 for 5 days. Was I easily making $5,000? Not
Mm.
at all. But I had to trust in myself that this was going to take me somewhere. I could do something with the content. I can be a better player. I can learn from coaches, right? Like, what better way to learn than from a good coach as well? So I always say I'm a student of the game. I'm a student of coaching as well. So I have that growth mindset. I don't think I'm perfect. I don't think, I'm the best already. Like I stay humble and stay focused. And so investing in that personal brand, investing in Simon's coaching, investing in pickleball coaching, all that is like, yeah. So I was barely breaking even. I was in a deficit for a while for sure. But that also motivated me to be like, do more and get more back. So,
Can you just share when you first started coaching, what level you were at? I'm thinking about all the questions that a coach is, but thinking
mhm.
about on this session. But you were like 3.5, 3 to 3.9.
Yeah, like my duper was like a 3.8, 3.9. Duper is a very dynamic thing. But yeah, like I would say I compete at 3.5. So, and I still kind of am. So, yeah, I
Okay,
would say like
perfect.
3.5.
I just want to talk
Hmm.
about lesson structure because I
Yeah.
know that this will be super valuable for someone who's like, what do I do in the beginner lesson? Like just as a kickstart, we don't need to talk about the different
Yeah.
levels.
Hmm.
If you want to learn the ascension model, just again, link in the description. But like as a
Hmm.
basic, like to get yourself paid, right? What
Hmm.
is the lesson structure? How long?
Yeah.
We talked about pricing already, but I think this is going to be just great for
Hmm.
someone to be like, okay, I can just go in action, this get some results.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I will say focus on the outcomes that you want to achieve. So like if someone's learning how to play, the outcome is walk away knowing how to play a full game. What does that mean? That means knowing how to hit a ball. Well, first let's back up a bit. Let's knowing what pickleball is now, knowing how to hit a ball and knowing the rules and scoring and then playing a full game, right? And so another thing I'll emphasize for beginners is like don't overwhelm them. You don't need to in one session teach them everything you know about pickleball in a day. Like it's okay. Like we think sometimes that giving value is giving a ton of knowledge, but it's focusing on the key outcomes in the easiest way possible, right? So the way I break up my lessons in general, so I do hour and a half class. Um, some you could do an hour, you could do 2 hours. It kind of depends on your court availability. For me, I'm maxed out booking 3 hours. So if I do an hour and a half, I can do two classes. And so I break it up into 30-minute kind of chunks. And so the first 30 minute is like, how do you hold a paddle? How do you hit a ball? What is the kitchen? Like very basics. And I just have them kind of dink back and forth at the kitchen, maybe hit some longer shots, moving back to the baseline. It's really just getting acclimated with the sport. Like, what does it feel like to hit with a paddle, with a ball? Some people have never played a racket or paddle sport, and some people have. And the wiffle ball is really light, right? So, yeah, I always have to give it a little bit of oomph behind it. And then, second module is like, okay, now you kind of know what pickleball is, you kind of have a feel for it. Okay, what's the very first thing you need to learn how to play a game? That's serving the ball, right? And so we teach the serve and then we do a drill that you serve back and forth with a partner. And that's roughly 20, 30 minutes. Everything is plus or minus depending on the skill and ability of your group. Some of them move faster, some of them need more time. And then I always allot between 30 to 45 minutes for, okay, now you know how to serve. Now you want to play a game, right? Now you're itching to play. Like, what is pickleball? Like, what is a game? So then I do a demo of the scoring, the rules, big group demo, and then we split off into our group of fours, and then we play our first game with the rules and scoring. And I always emphasize that it is a little confusing, but you guys help each other. So I established these community norms very early on. This is a beginner friendly, supportive, engaging, non judgmental community. Like, I don't care if you are not naturally talented, but you can't be mean and you can't be like, oh, don't you already know that? Right? Like, we're all learning. So I emphasize that really early on. And then they leave being like, okay, maybe I don't really understand 002 and exactly all the origins of that, but I feel like I can drop into a beginner open play and mix in. So that's where
Awesome.
they leave.
Yeah. And by the way, me and Emily were having a conversation thinking it wouldn't be cool for us to lay out all the lessons, the tournaments, exactly what she does. Because I teach the business stuff.
Yeah.
This is not what I teach. I know my zone. If you're interested in that, just post a comment lessons. And if we get enough people, I'll put it inside the mastermind. So yeah, awesome. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. So we talked about pricing. We talked about the lesson structure. I want to talk about court reserve because one of the things that happened early on, like any business owner, which is you don't have any tech, even though you're from the tech space, you're writing down email addresses on a piece of paper or, other forms. I
Yeah,
think a big turning point
exactly.
for you was court reserve. So,
Oh
so can
yeah,
we talk about
for
that
sure.
and why you felt it was important and for you
Yeah.
and the organization?
Yeah. And so when we talk about court reserve, like just think of any CRM system out
That's
there.
typically
So
just
it's
used
not
for
like,
club, so not typically used
yeah,
for many coaches. So,
yeah. So I had used court reserve from like a player's perspective, so I at least had heard of it. And Simon had a really good suggestion because he was testing out court reserve at the time. And I will say, yeah, that was a tipping point that I totally forgot to mention. But what was really nice about court reserve is like streamlining the whole process for me from scheduling an event, a class, all the way to checkout, all the way to like knowing who's showing up. So it was very excuse me, it was very scrappy, like starting out with. So I would recruit these leads from Facebook, right? And I'd go into Messenger, I'd chat and be like, oh, so you're interested in learning. Are you free on these dates and these dates? And obviously, everyone has completely different schedules. Or even when I shared a date, like they weren't free. And I realized the main objection is time. Like it wasn't even really the cost, it was just time. And so I was like, okay, I need a scheduler. And then I was also taking payment on Venmo. And there's this whole thing of like, did you confirm the payment? Now here's my Venmo. And so with Court Reserve, it was really neat because, like I said, I could just throw on an event, say I only can accept 4, 8, 12, 16, $50. It's integrated with Stripe. So I don't have to be like, here's my Venmo, here's my everything. And then right before the event, I can see everyone registered and be like, email these people, reminding them to come at this time in this place. Because I was using even Google Calendar at all the names of the people. I'd slowly like manually put it in and then I would create these name tags. It was really messy. And then what was really cool is it formed my email list, which became like a very powerful tool because whether you sign up for a class or, finalize a transaction, everyone who goes into my court reserve, my membership is free, is automatically subscribed to my email list. So even if for some reason they couldn't sign up for an existing class or an event, they were notified every week or whenever I sent like a newsletter. And so they could sign up whenever they wanted. So it became less about me manually following up with XYZ people, which is great when you have a set of 10. But when you grow to 100, 200, 500, 1,000 plus, like it's chaos to manage that. I'm like, I don't want to be in the business of managing follow-ups. Like I'm a team of one. I want to spend as much time delivering value to people on courts, like not doing all this admin stuff. I will say Court Reserve has its pros and cons. Like the pros is it gives you a lot of levers to customize things and it gives you a lot of features. But with that comes kind of a fire hose at the beginning where it's like, oh my gosh, what do I turn on? What is the bare minimum I need? Oh, what is this? What is that? Right? What do I need to configure? But once you get it working, I was in there a lot at the beginning. It's awesome. Like
and their
helped me a
support
lot.
is great. I gotta say. It is
Yes,
really
their
good. They have
support.
the live chat. Someone will be on with you in a minute. If you need, they'll send you a Loom video of directing you through something. So Court Reserve, if you're watching this, banger, banger shots on your customer service. It's very, very good.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I just want to say too, like with emails, like
Yeah,
I'm sure we can do a whole thing on email strategies, but you know, if you
for
send a
sure.
message out saying I need 3 people, they get filled. Like it just does, right? Like
Exactly.
if
Mhm.
if you need something, if you want to survey your
Mhm.
community, like email
Mhm.
marketing is such an important part of business when it comes to, you know,
Totally.
sales. Actually, not just marketing,
Mhm.
but sales. If you
Yeah.
want to make sales, you
Yeah.
can make them social. You can make it. So, can you talk about just maybe just give one headline or one thing that you've done with email that you're like they could implement if they sign up for something like Call Reserve?
Let's see. So it really helped me on my tournaments because the tournaments you fill them. So this is kind of answering a little more than the question, but like for the tournaments, when I first released it, nobody signed up. Maybe one or two. Like it was not a success at first. So what I did was I got leads from outside of my court reserve and brought in a ton of new people. And so like I was able to email them. I like had this, I think I did like a Google form. I had all these emails, exported them, put them into court reserve, and sent an email that was like beginner tournament registration now. And then that filled up because I sent, so you want to send really specific emails. Like I've noticed that yes, some people do read your newsletters, but if you can send a very clear message and action item, people are either like, this is relevant to me or they're not,
One thing,
you know? And
not a
so
big, not a whole
one
newsletter
thing,
of 20 things. They need one thing.
no,
Yeah, exactly.
one thing. So like whether it's tournament, it's this tournament, sign up here. That's it. Don't say there's this tournament, there's five other classes and events. I've done that before. Some of them read it, but it's not, it doesn't, you get overwhelmed. And then second, when I was selling out my league, I sent just that league. Like I didn't even put anything else. And that, you know, that also helped sell out that league too. I
I
sold
think,
out my league.
I do think it's worth reiterating what you said earlier about how you grew your court reserve wasn't necessarily sending them to the court reserve page, but you asked for their emails and then added them manually. I also did that too, and it worked a lot better, you know?
Yeah. Or
So
like you don't even have to add them manually because what happens is you collect emails for something you know they're interested in, for example, a tournament, and then you just send them an email without adding them in court reserve. And then when they sign up for the tournament, they have to create an account, right? And so now they're automatically added to your court reserve.
and so how
But
many
you
people
can
do you have
also
now? How many people do you have in your court reserve now? Like 600 or something?
550 at least. I don't check as much anymore, but yeah, like 550. Yeah.
And then another big move for you was the transition to your own group because now you've built your email list, you've built your community essentially. So
Yeah.
that was really important, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So that was like what I was going to mention too is like, so earlier we talked about Facebook, and this was kind of like a natural transition and also like something I've been wanting to do and had been putting off, which is like, okay, I should have more of like my own presence on Facebook aside from my profile because it's just easy for people to kind of like everyone's on Facebook, they're in these groups anyway. So I created a public group, Emily Wong Pickleball, and it was easy for my students to be like, oh, just go on this page. Or when I post, like they can reshare it out from there. People can join with like no commitment. Because some people, they are a little wary about sharing their email or committing to something that they don't really know about. But if they're in that group, they'll see things that happen from the community that I don't have to email about, like pictures from an event or a flyer or my students writing something. It's a lot more casual, organic, you're not locked in. And then from there, I always link my court reserve. So if they feel the need to opt in or want to or interested, they can do so at their own pace because once I've grown to a certain amount, I didn't really count on any like one pool to like have to fill my events. It's like you're absolutely welcome to join if you would like. I don't mind either which way. If you find value, come along. Like, you know, so I wasn't like I need a fill, like one spot left, two spots left. It's like I'm just giving offerings to the community and you can join at your own pace. So it kind of got to that point. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Uh, let's talk about your top business challenges. So there's been a lot of highs. We've talked a lot of highs, but I think it would be wrong for us to not talk about
Yes.
the reality of running a business, especially with weather conditions, especially with different
Oh
scenarios.
yeah.
You're gonna, not everyone is the perfect pickleball player. So can you maybe
Yeah.
talk about the top three challenges that you've had and how you've kind of overcome them?
Yes, so I will say top three. One is definitely court availability. That is the biggest challenge. That is the biggest dependency in doing all this. The second one is dealing with certain personalities. And third, um, hmm, I don't know, probably myself and like
Burnout, maybe
emotion.
burnout.
Yeah, emotions and burnout. Okay, so let me try to go one at a time. Okay, court availability. So yes, I do have the privilege of renting public courts with Seattle. So I'm aware of that. Not everyone has that access in their city, but there are limitations. Like I am only able to reserve 2 weeks in advance, like exactly 2 weeks. So it's midnight, 2 weeks before when I need that court. And when I reserve it, it could already be unavailable. There could be a group like a nonprofit or a youth program that already has it. And like 2 weeks in advance, it's kind of hard to plan, right? And so I've kind of made that work because I'll just stay up till midnight, get the courts, and then kind of finesse it. But it's really stressful managing all these court reservations. And something that happened to me recently is that one of the courts we were using for our league, the lights like they stopped working, and so I got a notification less than a day before this league. We were halfway through the season that was like, hey, these courts are going to shut down completely for 2 weeks. You can't use them during the day, you can't use them at night. And like with the sunset getting earlier and earlier and earlier, and my kind of audience being full-time people who work a 9 to 5, and obviously retirees and others can join, that kind of like really stunted my business because I can't get the courts and I can't get any courts at the time I need. Those are the only courts in Seattle that had lights that you could rent.
Right.
And so it's like, and I don't have access to, there's no dedicated indoor facilities in this region. There are also no dedicated, really, pickleball courts, at least not reservable. And so I was really like, what do I do? If I don't have courts, I can't like run this business, right? And so it was really stressful because it was like every day I'd be at the mercy of the city or the electricians fixing the court of like, is it fixed today? Like, if I show up and I have a league of 30 people, are we going to be able to use that?
Right.
And I will say, like, this ties to the burnout that we'll talk about later is like, feeling like that lack of control and having a key dependency be completely revoked from me is like, what do you do? I don't really have a clear answer to that. To be honest, I was in my own funk for 4 to 6 weeks because it happened to come at a time, and we'll talk more about this, where I am going full time in this. And I'm like, I am going full time. I went from the highs of summer, sell out, getting the courts I wanted. Of course, I had to finesse it a bit, but like it worked, right? I sold out everything and had wait lists, so like no courts at all, and I'm doing this full time, which means that revenue is even more key because it's impacting my livelihood at this point. It's not just some side hustle. So, fortunately, I was able to find these other courts. They finally fixed the lights, and through kind of finessing with we closed out that league, thank goodness, but it was very, very stressful. It put me in firefighting. It put me on defense as a business owner rather than playing offense. And I had to go out and be creative to find other courts. Like now I'm partnering with a basketball facility, finding private gyms. That's one challenge, but yeah. I will say it's still going to be a continual challenge, but it's important not to kind of give up your control as well when these kinds of things happen. Make decisions quicker and pivot if needed, but I got stuck in there a little too long. Maybe I'll go to the emotional one next because it's just tied to this, but like it's really important, especially when you're in a place of caring for other people and doing things for other people or being a chronic people pleaser like myself. So when you get in that mode, it's like I felt so bad that I couldn't live up to expectations that I was giving to my students. So league is like you meet at the same time, same place, have the same group of people. It's very consistent for 6 weeks. And I'm like, oh no, we don't have the courts. We're meeting at different times. We don't even know if we have any courts. Like, and pickleballers just want to play. If you guarantee you can play and they can't play, they're really upset at you. So I was thinking in my head every day, like before bed, like during the day, oh my God, there are people coming at me. They're like really mad. They're gonna trash my league. They're gonna trash talk me. Like I sold them a lie. Like all this stuff was in my head. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna go out of business. I'm not gonna make any revenue. Like I don't feel I can't even sell anymore. Like it was all these negative thoughts. And at the same time, I wasn't taking care of myself. Like, yes, my business was doing great at the peak of summer, but I was still working full time. I had to go in the office 5 days a week. It was an hour commute each way. I was training for tournaments myself. Probably the most important tournament of the year. It happened in August, and I was traveling. So I burned completely out. Like my relationship was it was not in shambles, but like it was challenging because we prioritized the business. Like we saw each other, just the coach, just the lead events. So on the outside, it was great. We didn't go on any dates for months, really.
Right.
I didn't get to just nap on a Sunday afternoon. I was constantly working. And so my self-care was like out the window. I didn't even cook. I had like a delivery plan. I DoorDashed more than I ever should and never will do that again. So I guess the challenge here is like, make sure you do things that still bring you joy and know what those things are so you can count on them to keep you grounded and sustain yourself because yeah, you can go on your highs or me, I can go on my highs for a long period of a period of time, but there's a wall that I'm going to crash into and that recovery is like it's hard and some people may never recover from that. Like my wall, I hit it for 4 or 6 weeks. Like that's not an affordable amount of time to, be stunted for. So, anyways, please self-care and I will do that too. That
Many,
means going
many,
out
many
like yeah.
texts between me and Emily of like, oh,
Yes.
please don't.
Yeah, like I'm coming here at confidence, kind of confident on the other side of it. I was confident in the summer, but there are times that Simon's suggesting things. I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't even want to go on camera. I don't even want like I was not thriving. Like I was feeling really bad about myself. I feel like everything I was doing wasn't working out. Like was on a verge of a breakdown way too quickly. I was just burnt out. Yeah. And so definitely self-care. And then if you get to that point, one of the best advice Simon has, like take a day to rest. Just shut down. Because I realized I didn't even have a single day to just not think about the business. It's not like a 9 to 5 job where you can just stop thinking about it. It's like all consuming for
To
me.
be fair, though, I mean, you had a lot of
Yeah.
things hit you at once, right?
Yes.
There's work stuff, there's the court stuff, like there was
Hmm.
COVID. So
Yeah.
this, I just want to give context to burnout, but you were dealing with
Yeah.
3 or 4 things at once.
Yeah. Totally. A lot of things and a lot of things that required more emotional processing than I allotted for.
And you got to be able to vent somewhere, otherwise you'll blow up, right? You got to have an outlet.
Exactly.
You got to have
Yeah.
support. Um,
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the reality of business with people.
Hmm.
I Yesterday I played and I was like, dude,
Yeah.
you just showed up like an idiot on the court. So there's like the court, us how we show up on courts, but
Yes.
let's talk about the
Yes.
reality of working with people
Yeah.
and the red flags that we need to look out for, the letting go of people if we need to, because
Hmm.
it's not all roses because we all have emotions, right?
No.
So
Yeah,
let's just talk about
exactly.
some of your lessons and things to be aware of for others in going into a
Hmm.
business, or maybe people are in a situation right now where things are
Hmm.
going great, but in reality, things are going to happen, which you got to deal with.
Yeah, so I will say if I had to find a common theme, sometimes I let the one person that's causing trouble or I don't completely drive with or they don't drive with me hold me back from everyone else. So it's kind of like letting the 1% negative outweigh the 99% positive. Like
Right.
kind of the squeaky wheel gets the most attention. So one of the most prime examples of that is like early on, I tried moving more high ticket. So I was selling like more of a coaching package, like one-on-one lessons, 6 weeks, I think it was like $500. And so I had a client where, there were some red flags in the beginning where it was like she was like very insistent on my time, like calling, texting all the time, just like beating herself up a lot, all this stuff. And like just already questioning my price from the beginning. Like we had lowered it, it was like 750 to begin with. And then we did like, the 6 lessons and she was happy throughout. And then when I had asked for like a testimonial or review, she had completely out of left field gave like, she came out of nowhere with all this unsatisfaction. And it was because apparently she had gone to a coach who was offering, it was like a guest coach offering a free program in the area, like a free 1 day thing. And she was like, "Oh, I got value out of that. Your thing should now be half the cost or free." And so, I mean, I couldn't help but take that a little personally, especially because that was like my first like one-on-one client, high ticket. And it came out of left field. Like we did midpoint check-in, she was happy. And so it's so interesting that the person who can rave the most about you can be the first person to turn on you when it's convenient for them and throw all these negative insults. And so that set me back for like 2 weeks because I was feeling really guilty, feeling bad about myself, questioning my abilities. And that means that's 2 weeks of not creating all these lovely programs that all the at least 300 to 400 people at the time in my community were counting on and bringing more people into the sport. I was letting this one kind of person, their toxicity get to me and let that kind of define me, even though I really didn't want it to. I was really taken aback. And it also brings up personal traumas of people from the past being very confrontational, abusive, name calling, all this stuff. So there were some triggers there as well that we really had to kind of sort through. Um, and then, in today's world, because that was months ago, it's like you have that one person that you can just never please, like whether you offer it to them for free or for whatever, or these things, like just trying to please them, like that strong personality, that squeaky wheel is like you're just always going to be at a loss, really. And just like identifying that early on. Again, I always let those louder voices speak too loud. But then, I have people around me to remind me, like, what about this person? What about this student? Like, they're the ones that come to every event. They're the ones raving about you. They're the ones that would do anything for you if you asked. Like, why don't you focus on people like that? Whether them specifically or people like them. Let's bring more of that in the community. Or the person at the tournament yelling at me. I hosted a tournament. She yelled at me because she was losing, and she said I should kick out the people who were doing well, but the people who were doing well were like really sweet people and people that absolutely embody the values of the community. And so letting people like that taint the experience is like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is because I still deal with that, but just focus on the positive. I don't know what else to say. Yeah.
Yeah. If you heard some helicopters, I'm in Coronado, so there's ships, there's helicopters always happening around here. So I don't know if you can hear it,
Lots of movement.
but so yeah, I just want to share on this just a bit of, I guess, guidance, which is like every business owner is going to go through it. And of course, we need to acknowledge people's feelings and emotions, but we can take it personally when actually the person behind the scenes have got other things that they don't want to express, and then people can blow up. And in certain situations, what happens is that they don't express themselves in the moment, and they don't express how they feel about something, and so they end up then becoming problematic later because of another situational scenario. And so it's all about we all need to take responsibility in certain situations. I've made wrong moves in business. I've needed to admit when I was wrong, but at the end of the day, we do need to, in time in business, as you go further into your entrepreneurial journey, you will learn a couple of things. You will learn about red flags that you ignore, and it's the same in personal relationships. And you will also understand the need for boundaries. Because if you don't hold those boundaries, you will essentially enable people to their own behavior. And this is why personal development, emotional intelligence is such an important component of business, so that you do not ruin experiences for other people. Because if you don't nip things in the bud early, that person will bring their toxicity and spread it throughout a community of which it could destroy.
Yeah. And I'll add one thing is like be careful about making changes just to please that one person. For example, if you have a tournament format that's working or an event format, just because you get one person giving the negative feedback, like be careful about just taking that to heart and making the changes just to please them when again 99 or 80%, let's say a majority, are happy with it, be sure to also survey people who might be more quiet, but who really did have a good time. Make sure you do that before you change something, because now you might just destroy like your core offering. So something to be aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple more things here. I want to talk about love. I want to talk about Ali. So, and actually, this plays also into business, right? Because I do want to
Yeah.
separate the two to an extent, but also getting help. I also want to bring that up. But you found love in pickleball. Share that story, and then we'll segue into the business side of how he's been helping and supporting you.
Yeah, so I mean, I really lucked out, and I prior to meeting my partner Ali, I was very jaded about dating and love. I was on the dating apps. I was on Hinge, spring, summer 2022, and then also fall, and it's like just wasn't having a lot of luck. So right before, around the time I learned pickleball, I was like on a girls trip in like Denver, and my one of my best friends was like, I always imagined that you would meet someone through a hobby, because I get really into my hobbies, like playing the guitar, whatever I do, I'm really into it. Rock climbing, ceramics, pottery, that kind of stuff. And so I was like, huh, how do I do that? It's still COVID, meet someone through a hobby. And so when I went home, I changed my Hinge profile completely. I added things I cared about. I
Dating
added
profile
pickleball.
tips.
Dating profile. I added pickleball. I So there was like a prompt. I don't know if it still exists. Obviously, I haven't been on there, but it's like first three date ideas. I'm like, okay, I'm so jaded of dating. I'm tired of getting coffee. I'm tired of getting dinner, talking, and me doing all the talking or interviewing. Like, I'm done with that. Let's do fun dates, things that I like, even if like whatever, it's corny. So the first one, pickleball. The second one was like browsing a bookstore, because I love talking about personal development books, and I want to see what healing they've done. And the third one was like, I forget, taking a walk, because if I'm not going to get a date potential, I'll at least get my 10,000 steps in, something like that. So, anyways, I was obviously hoping they would do pickleball. Because at the time, like I said, I got two paddles. Hey, there's a second paddle not being used. Like, it's just me going out and playing on my own. Even if this date doesn't work out, I still got in my reps, because I didn't have friends that played. I didn't have anyone I knew that played pickleball. And so I was like, at least I'll, get in some playtime. So I only responded to people who commented something pickleball, either directly through that prompt, or like, whatever. You can send a message. I forget exactly how it works. But Ollie slides in and has a funny thing that was like, I beat old ladies in my free time, like in pickleball. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, who does he think he is? And then at first I thought he came off like kind of like, okay,
Cocky.
like very over cocky, like overconfident. And look at his profile, it's like the most genuine looking person. I was like, oh, he's probably just trying to get my attention. So his pictures looked like not sketchy at all, not trying to portray himself as any which way, very like people, family oriented, very genuine. Maybe just wasn't sure how to flirt. I don't know. And so I responded. And then I realized, like, I think we just messaged that whole night. And then he kept asking, so when are we playing pickleball? And then so it was this whole
So
thing.
your dream,
But he
yes.
managed, it was my dream. But he managed to convince me to get dinner first, and then pickleball was our second date officially. It's on the courts that I teach at today, actually, Bitter Lake Park. And yeah, let's see from there. I mean, I was like end of 2022, and then we started officially dating early in 23, and I convinced him to go to like a Valentine's Day tournament. It was like in Tacoma, an hour away. I don't go to Tacoma for no reason, and I needed a mixed doubles partner. I was like, how convenient. We always joke that we test our like doubles chemistry. And so I was like, okay, there's this like silly tournament called Valentine's Volley. You want to do it? And he was fair game to do anything with me. Like, I mean, I don't take this for granted, but he was really that like genuine and kind, and did the tournaments, realized that we could just keep doing tournaments together, whether we did well or not. I'm a little too competitive for my own good, which is another subject. And then when I started teaching, I needed to scale out. And he knows I spend way too much time on these courts. So the best way to find me and to see me the most is to join me on these courts. And so he came out. It was also a safety reason, because sunset was getting earlier at the time in spring. And then he started teaching and realized that he was good at it, that he loved it, the people loved him, he made an impact, we were impacting together. So I will say we lucked out. I lucked out. I mean, the fact that he cares about my community so much, he sees me really light up on the courts, and I'm in my zone when I'm teaching. I'm silly. I am myself. I am able to speak to every person on that court, and he loves that. He thinks it's like the best thing because I'm the happiest. And I joke that he's kind of like the soccer mom. Like at the tournaments, he helps coach there too, but he brings the drinks. He brings the canopy so people stay cool. You know, he keeps people hydrated. He brings the snacks. He brings my stickers. He like compliments me. He's very detail oriented. I'm more of a group leader. I love spreading the mission. He's the one like in the weeds doing the work to also impact. So very complimentary in that sense.
I think it's
Yeah.
worth bringing up. I love this story there and the love side of it. I do also want to bring up the group sizing around what you feel comfortable in one on one versus when you feel like when Ali comes in, you can do bigger groups. Can you talk about those numbers? So I think it's you mentioned to me around 8 on your own, and then if Ali's there, like bigger size groups, 12, 16.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
what's a push for you in terms of like I feel like I'm still giving the attention versus like is it 8, 12, and then Ali is like the more 16 number?
Yeah, so I would say 8 to 1 is always a healthy number to cap at. I have once taught a 12 person, and that's because like Ollie was traveling or was out of town, and it was a lot, but I lucked out because we had some groups that were able to pick up things faster than others. So I would say I was able to get to 12 to 16 with Ollie's help. And I will say it's really hard to teach as one person when you don't have either an even number or a group of four, because a lot of things are in partner drills, and then you play doubles in groups of four or doubles drills as well. And so having Ollie, he was able to like sub in if someone was missing, or he was able to also circle and take on. We circled everyone, but roughly 8 people at a time. And that was a healthy amount to give everyone the attention they needed. And obviously, people always want more if they can get it. But one disclaimer I'll add with beginners is like they actually don't like focused on attention on them the whole time because they get
Mm.
performance anxiety.
Mm.
They're like coaches watching now, missing my serve, and they start to become dependent on you because when they are within their own groups of four, they are self-sufficient. They'll ask each other the score and they'll help each other. When a coach is around, the expectation is that the coach will be the one helping you. But I like to teach in ways that empower people to either help each other or also help themselves because I'm not going to be there every time they play pickleball, right? Like I would love to, but the reality is like I'm not going to. But we have a community. The open place, you guys help each other, right? So again, we establish those norms that do naturally help us scale very early on, and it worked out for us.
Yeah. And then also just want to bring up the Dinkin duo because of your situation. You're in a relationship. You created something unique, which I think is a good lesson for anyone. And I've always said this pickleball plus, right? So for me,
Yeah,
picklepreneur, so pickleball and entrepreneurship. For you, you're in a relationship. So you create a Dinkin duo. If someone's a relationship coach, they could do something there. So how has
yeah.
the Dinkin duo gone?
Yeah, so about a year into our relationship, so this year, January, I was like, oh, I think we were on a call, we were like celebrating our anniversary, and we're like, wow, so much has happened this past year, like especially with the theme of pickleball, like all these tournaments, all these trips, the family gatherings we've had where we played with them, building like a pickleball practice wall, all this stuff. We're like, oh, Ollie was like, well, you should capture it like in a blog or something. I'm like, wait, we could just do it on Instagram. Like I could do an account today. Like, what do we call ourselves? Like on this random phone call one night and we're like the Dinkin duo, something wholesome and cute. And that's where we like uploaded our Instagram footage. And usually, like I said early on in the call, I'm very low key. I've never publicized or hard launched a relationship, whatever you want to call it. But I felt confident because we did so much stuff that was not just about a relationship. It was about something that a lot of people love, which is pickleball. I don't post on it as actively just because I'm trying to grow my own brand. And we talked about like maybe like managing like two separate brands can be a lot, can be conflicting. So what we did instead is like I brought the Dinkin Duo fun name into my event. So I did a couples tournament plus clinic. So we did doubles drills and like helping with their partner chemistry and practicing that in a round robin tournament. And obviously, I always like to be inclusive. You don't actually have to be a couple. You can be friends. You can be two people in our community. Any sort of Dinkin duo you want to be. I don't. It doesn't have to be mixed. I don't have any exclusions like that. And we've hosted like two successful Dink and Duo events where like that that was a tipping point for my league, but like just teaching and then going into tournament was a great format. So
Well,
that's how I brought us into it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Just kind of wrapping up, where do you see pickleball going over this next couple of years, and in particular your business evolving? I'd be curious to know, and also your biggest month so far.
Yes. Okay. So okay, where do I see pickleball going? I mean, to be honest, I don't super know. I know it's gonna keep growing. I know there's gonna be more courts popping up. I know there's gonna be more people playing it, getting into it, and it's probably like on the more serious competitive side, there's going to be a lot more talent coming into the game as well. But at the same time, that is not necessarily the majority. The majority of people are rec players. They're doing this for exercise, they're doing it for social, they're doing it to have fun, they're doing it to be part of something bigger than themselves, right? That's the majority of the market is people doing this casually and
Hmm.
maybe doing the occasional local tournament. So I still see that being a thing. It's just going to be a lot more prevalent. Maybe it'll be like the networking, thing, the way to meet people, the way to date, rather than going to golf or, going on these coffee dates. Maybe that'd be cool. I would love to foster that. And then in terms of where my business is going, I mean, I'm still in a lot of ways trying to figure out what's that like next big thing. But something I realized it's not like an overnight, it is not the next big thing. I tell Ollie on the phone the other day, it's the next lily pad. Like, let's not worry about how are you going to make the next six figures. It's like, what is like the most kind of natural thing to do? It might be a little out of your comfort zone, but like what's going well, which is the tournaments, the leagues, the clinics. And then what resources do I have and what resources do I need to go get? So I did go to a mastermind to learn how to create a pickleball club and facility. I have quite a few investors interested in doing that. It feels more of a potential North Star or a bigger lily pad to go to. I think the next natural thing is to evangelize my programs throughout the broader metro area. So I run like a mobile club operation, which means I don't have to just be in North Seattle. I now have found um, locations on the east side, kind of on the south end, kind of in more mid Seattle, the north. So what if I could grow my programs and empower my students as, to come onto my team to evangelize our values and build a league in each of those regions. I don't know, run a tournament in each of them, meet people where they're at, right? Reduce a limitation or an objection. So I would love to be like, let's get something going every single day. And I don't necessarily have to be there. I'm scaling out now. Like, one thing that was really special on Tuesday, even this week, was like I empowered a student. I taught her how to play at the end of June, more on the quiet, shy side, doesn't always say a lot. She's amazing. And was like, could you help lead an open play? Can you be a ambassador? And she spent the last 14 years being a stay-at-home mom. Like, she hasn't really gotten to have her own career. And seeing her step into that role and like kick people off courts, lead them, help them with their game. It was like I'm like moved. Like, I have trouble asking for help because I don't want to use people or take advantage, but I didn't realize how powerful it was to develop them. Like, it's not just helping me, it's helping them and helping them help the community, right? And like I really want to grow an ambassador program now. Like, I am scouting out names and yeah.
Awesome.
That's my medium term.
What
And
would
then
what
the
would be
last
your?
thing, yeah.
Oh, go on.
Oh, you said the biggest month?
Yeah, just in terms of
I
your
think
biggest
like
month so far.
12,000 in the summer. Yeah.
Yeah,
When
awesome.
we sold out all our clinics, when Ollie came and helped with every single event, when we dedicated most all our weekday evenings and weekends. Like I said, no dates. I didn't even see my friends except for July 4th. Like, I was working around the clock. Yeah.
Awesome. And what are just some parting advice for you to give to anyone who's thinking about becoming a pickleball coach or is maybe a pickleball coach right now, but not maximizing their potential?
The first thing is get started. Keep going. That would be my thing is like I said, the actions they build on each other.
Milestones.
But yes, milestones. And then so get started. Know that you can be a coach, but with the right intentions. Like, you do genuinely want to help people. Yes, there is a money component, but if you can come off as genuine, you can sell organically. Like the sales, it comes. People, they feel that energy. And then if you are already a coach and you want to scale, you want to grow, yeah, look at opportunities of your format. If you're doing one-on-one, try group things and see how it goes. At least experiment with that. Some people are like, I don't want to work in groups, but at least know that you've tried it. Try the 4-person. See if you can recruit a friend. It doesn't have to be a certified coach. It just has to be someone that knows how to play the game, right? Like it doesn't have to be anyone with a specific title. And then once you have a bigger group, check with your community to see what are the questions they're asking. Sometimes people tell you what they need. The top questions I get are, what are the leagues in the area? Do you do private lessons? Do you do youth programs? Like they're
Yeah.
telling me what they want, right?
Yeah.
So listen, open your ears and listen, see what you get mass majority. And then even if you're doing these events for free, make sure you use that as a time to survey people, like talk to them, evangelize brand, ask questions. Like, yes, it's free, but you get so much value. Like, open plays are a cheaper offering, but I get to get my face out there, remind them, of our brand, remind them of our value, remind them of the community. It's all these valuable touch points that lead to something a lot bigger.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, you have packed so much knowledge and value into this episode. I'm sure that people have written a ton of notes, and hopefully
I
they're going to
hope
be
so.
action in those notes. How can people
Yes.
reach out to you? I'll put the links in the description, but how can people reach out to
Yeah.
you if they want to get to know you?
Yeah, Facebook is great. Emily Wong. There's a picture of me with a paddle. There's a check mark next to my name, the verified. Instagram at ej.wong and the number 8. And yeah, those are the best places. I will message you back. I'm very responsive. That's another thing. Be responsive. Time is of the essence. I've closed a lot of sales that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Emily. And guys, if you want to get your business moving forward, you can also check out links in the description to some trainings to help you grow in this industry, change more lives, maybe find some love, right? It's all possible. I don't know if you're watching this as single, whatever, but Emily, you're such a great champion for the sport. And also, you're such a great leader and somebody that cares, and is just willing to, this is something I'll just wrap up with, which is, like, actually, I came into pickleball, September last year after going through this medical condition called Guillain-Barré, and I decided to go all in. I got very luckily because Emily was my first client, and she literally crushed it and took action. But what I can share about the attributes that I see in Emily, which is an action taker, right? Humble, willing to do the work, being willing to be honest and share really what's really going on behind the scenes with her, so that she can guide. But she loves the space, and she also understands what the possibilities are if you put in the effort and the time. And having that mindset of scalable, I think, is also very, very important, of like where you want it to go so that you can sustain it. Because I think a lot of people get caught in a trap whereby it becomes something that you don't like because of how it impacts you. And so you get these ebbs and flows, but initially you're like, I know this is something that I want to be sustainable. And so I got to set it up in the right way. And I think that's a certain mindset that you need to have going into the space of what you really want as a pickleball coach, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Emily. And
Yeah, thank you. And I lucked out. I got to work with Simon from the beginning, and he's helped so much. Like I've been quoting him throughout this conversation, and I quote him in my life too. Like all he knows about it. So like, yeah, thanks to Simon, I'm able to get where I am and also keep going. Like now I know I have the support to do this full time and to be, to grow as an entrepreneur as well, to grow as a coach, grow as a person. So I'm very lucky myself.
Thank you, Emily.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, if you've got any questions for myself or Emily, I'm sure Emily will check the comments of this video. Go and post in the comments if you want any clarity on anything, and we'll support you in your growth as a picklepreneur. And I will see you very soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye.